I opened the email at 11:47 p.m. because I couldn't sleep, and my phone was the only light in the room. The subject line said credit monitoring alert, which wasn't unusual. I got those sometimes when I used my card in a new city or bought something online from a seller I'd never used before. But when I tapped it open, the first line made my stomach drop in a way that felt physical, like missing the last step on a staircase. Your credit score has decreased by 183 points. I sat up so fast my cat jumped off the bed. 183 points. I'd spent years building that score, being careful, paying everything early, keeping balances low. I clicked through to the full report with hands that had gone cold without me noticing. The page loaded slowly, one section at a time, like it was giving me a chance to brace myself. I didn't take it. 14 new accounts, all opened within the last 8 months. Credit cards I'd never applied for, store cards I'd never heard of, a personal loan for $34,000 that I'd apparently requested and received in June. My name was on every single one. My social security number, my birth date, everything spelled correctly, formatted properly, like I'd filled out the applications myself. Total balance across all accounts, $127,480. I read that number 3 times before my brain would accept it was real. Then I opened my banking app, my real credit card, my savings account. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, nothing missing, no unauthorized charges, which meant whoever did this hadn't touched my actual money. They'd created an entire shadow version of my financial life and left it there like a bomb set to detonate when the bills came due. I took screenshots of everything, not because I was thinking clearly, but because my hands needed something to do that wasn't shaking. Then I looked at the account details more carefully. The oldest account had been opened in March, 8 months ago, and I'd never received a single piece of mail about it. Not one statement, not one welcome packet, not one collections notice. I scrolled down to the mailing addresses listed for each account. They weren't my address. They were all the same place, a house I recognized immediately because I'd spent Thanksgiving there last year and Christmas the year before. My sister's house. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Then I did what any person would do when they found their entire credit history had been hijacked by someone they'd trusted their whole life. I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice groggy but not quite asleep. Claire? It's midnight. What's wrong? I didn't ease into it. Why is your address on my credit report? Silence. Not the confused kind. The calculating kind. What are you talking about? She asked, and her voice had shifted into something careful, controlled, like she was reading from a script she'd prepared for this exact moment. I just got a notification, I said. My credit score dropped 183 points because there are 14 accounts I never opened, and they all list your address. Another pause. Then a small gasp, perfectly timed. Oh my God. Someone must have used both our information. Did you call the credit bureau? This is serious, Claire. You need to freeze everything right now. The concern in her voice sounded genuine. But my sister taught middle school English. She knew how to perform sincerity when she needed a parent to believe their kid had turned in homework that didn't exist. And I'd watched her do it for 20 years. Why would someone use your address for my accounts? I asked. I don't know, she said, still calm, still helpful. Maybe they're trying to confuse the trail, or maybe it's a neighbor. You should file a police report. Do you want me to come over? The offer sounded kind. It wasn't. It was an attempt to get me off the phone, into her space, surrounded by her narrative. No, I said. I'm handling it. Claire. Her voice shifted, taking on the older sister tone she used when she wanted to sound protective. Don't spiral. This happens to people all the time. We'll figure it out together. Just don't do anything drastic until we know what's going on. Drastic. The word landed wrong, like she already knew what I might find if I kept looking. I'll call you tomorrow, I said, and ended the call before she could argue. The apartment felt too quiet after that. I made coffee, I didn't drink, and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, pulling up account details one by one. Each application had been submitted online. Each one had my correct information. My mother's maiden name for security questions, answers to verification prompts that only someone who knew me would have. And each one had been approved because my credit was good, my income was verifiable, my history was clean. Until now, I found the customer service numbers for 3 of the credit card companies and called them. The first 2 were automated systems that told me to call back during business hours. The third connected me to a fraud department representative who sounded tired but professional. I need to report identity theft, I said, and gave him the account number. He pulled it up, asked me security questions. I answered correctly, then went quiet for a moment. Okay, he said. This account was opened online in June. The billing address on file is in Oregon. That's not my address, I said. I live in Colorado. I understand, he said, not unkindly. But the application included a statement that you were relocating for work and needed the card sent to a temporary address. My throat tightened. Relocating for work. A detail specific enough to sound legitimate. What else is on the application? He read through it. Email address I'd never seen before. Phone number I didn't recognize. But my name, my social, my date of birth, all correct. And at the bottom, an electronic signature that was supposed to be mine. Can you send me a copy of the application? I asked. I can send it to the email on file, he said. That's not my email, I said. Can you send it to me another way? He hesitated. I can mail it to the address on your driver's license, but it'll take 7 to 10 business days. Do it, I said, and freeze the account. I'm filing a fraud report. He processed the request, gave me a case number, and told me I'd need to submit an identity theft affidavit and a police report. I wrote it all down on the back of an envelope, hands steadier now because I had a process to follow. I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with a blanket around my shoulders, working through the list of accounts. By the time the sun came up, I had 7 case numbers, 4 frozen accounts, and a growing folder of screenshots that showed a pattern. Every account had been opened during a 3-week period in June. Every application claimed I was relocating to Oregon for work. Every billing address was my sister's house. At 8 a.m., I called the credit bureau's fraud hotline. The representative who answered walked me through placing a fraud alert on my file, which meant any new credit applications would require additional verification. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Do you know who might have had access to your personal information? I thought about my sister's house, the guest room where I'd stayed last Christmas when flights got canceled, the filing cabinet in her home office where she kept important documents, tax returns, insurance papers, the conversation we'd had over wine when she asked about my job, my salary, whether I'd ever thought about moving somewhere cheaper. Yes, I said. I think I do. She didn't ask me who. She just said, you'll need to file a police report, and I'm going to flag your account for additional monitoring. Can you tell me if there have been any address changes on my file? I asked. She clicked through screens I couldn't see. There was an address update in March, changed from your Colorado address to one in Oregon. The same month the first account was opened. My sister hadn't just stolen my information. She'd rerouted everything so I'd never see it coming. I drove to the police station at 9 a.m., brought printouts of everything, sat across from an officer who looked like he'd heard this story 100 times before. He took my statement, made copies of my documentation, and gave me a case number. Then he asked if I knew who did it. My sister, I said, and saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. He didn't react, just wrote it down. Do you have proof? I showed him the addresses, the timeline, the details only she would know. He nodded slowly. This'll go to detectives. Might take a few weeks. In the meantime, freeze your credit. File reports with the FTC. Document everything. I did all of it. Froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. Filed an identity theft report with the FTC. Requested copies of every fraudulent application. And then I did the one thing I knew would force my sister to show her hand. I sent her a text. I filed a police report. They're investigating. She called immediately. I didn't answer. She called again. Then a third time. Then a text came through. Claire, please, we need to talk. You're making a huge mistake. I stared at the message. Not I didn't do it. Not this is crazy. Just we need to talk and you're making a mistake. The language of someone who knew exactly what I'd found and needed to control the narrative before it controlled her. I didn't respond. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. Not from my sister, from an attorney. The letter was short, professional, and threatening in the way legal documents are when they're designed to scare you into compliance. It stated that my sister was prepared to pursue defamation charges if I continued to make false accusations. It demanded I retract my police report and cease all contact with credit agencies regarding matters that, according to the letter, were the result of my own financial mismanagement. I read it twice. Then I called the detective assigned to my case. They're trying to intimidate you, he said, voice flat. Don't respond. Don't engage. Just forward it to me. I did. And then I waited. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a fraud investigator at one of the credit card companies. She'd received my affidavit and had pulled additional records. What she found made her contact law enforcement. The applications were submitted from the same IP address, she said. We traced it to a residential internet connection in Oregon. The billing address for that connection matches the address on your sister's utility bills. My chest tightened, so she submitted them from her house. That's what it looks like, the investigator said. And there's more. Some of the accounts show purchases made at stores near her home. Physical purchases using cards mailed to that address. I closed my eyes. She hadn't just opened accounts. She'd used them. Furniture, electronics, a vacation, all charged to my name, sent to her house, used in her life. What happens now? I asked. We're forwarding everything to the prosecutor's office, she said. This is identity theft, fraud, and wire fraud if she used the cards across state lines. Federal charges. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building and let myself feel it. The grief of losing someone I'd thought I knew. The anger at being used. The strange relief of knowing I wasn't imagining it. That night, my phone rang. Not my sister. My mother. Claire, she said, voice tight. Your sister is beside herself. She says you're trying to ruin her life over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I said. She opened 14 credit cards in my name and spent $127,000. She said it was a mistake, my mother said, that she was trying to help you build credit and it got out of hand. I almost laughed. She stole my identity and you think that's helping? She made a mistake, my mother repeated, like saying it enough times would make it true. Family forgives family, Claire. You don't send your sister to prison over money. I felt something cold and clean settle into place. She didn't make a mistake. She committed fraud. And if you call me again to defend her, I'm blocking your number. My mother gasped like I'd slapped her. But I didn't take it back. I just ended the call. The investigation took 3 months. In that time, I received copies of every fraudulent application. Each one had my forged signature, slightly different each time, like she'd practiced. Each one had details only she would know, answers to security questions we'd laughed about over family dinners, references to jobs I'd mentioned in passing. The prosecutors contacted me in November. They had enough evidence to charge her with 15 counts of identity theft, 12 counts of credit card fraud, and 3 counts of wire fraud. They asked if I wanted to proceed. Yes, I said. She was arrested on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there, but my mother called to tell me, voice breaking, asking how I could do this to my own sister. I didn't argue. I just said, she did this to herself, and hung up. The trial was scheduled for March, but in February, her attorney contacted the prosecutor with a plea deal. My sister would plead guilty to 5 counts of identity theft in exchange for dropping the federal charges. She'd pay restitution, serve 18 months, and be on probation for 3 years after release. The prosecutor called to ask if I'd accept the deal. Will she admit what she did? I asked. Yes, he said. In court, on the record. Then yes, I said. The hearing was brief. My sister stood in front of a judge, wearing a gray suit I'd never seen before, and admitted to opening accounts in my name, using my information without permission, and spending money she knew wasn't hers. Her voice was steady, practiced, like she was reading someone else's confession. The judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing. She looked at me for the first time since I'd walked into the courtroom. I'm sorry, she said. And I couldn't tell if she meant it or if it was just another performance. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in minimum security, ordered her to pay $127,480 in restitution, and banned her from opening any credit accounts for 10 years. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Afterward, my mother cornered me in the hallway. Are you happy now? She asked. Your sister is going to prison. I looked at her. My sister committed 15 felonies and got 18 months. Yeah, I'm okay with that. She started to say something else, but I walked away. Some arguments aren't worth having. I spent the next 6 months rebuilding, disputing every account, sending letters to creditors, watching my credit score climb slowly back toward where it had been. It took a year before it was fully repaired. Longer before I stopped checking my credit report every week, waiting for another surprise. My sister served 14 months, got out early for good behavior. She didn't call, didn't write, didn't apologize beyond what the court required. My mother sends Christmas cards now, signed with just her name. She doesn't mention my sister, doesn't invite me to family events where we might overlap, and I don't ask. People sometimes wonder if I regret it, turning in my own sister. Watching her go to prison, the answer is no. Because the alternative was letting her make me complicit, letting her destroy my financial life while I stayed silent to preserve a relationship that was never real to begin with. I changed jobs, moved to a new city, started over in ways that had nothing to do with credit scores. And I built a life she couldn't touch, not because I was hiding, but because I finally understood what boundaries looked like. 3 years later, I got a letter. Not from my sister, from a restitution office. She'd made her first payment, $500, toward a debt of $127,480. It would take her 20 years to pay it off at that rate. I deposited the check and put the letter in a folder labeled closed, because that's what it was. Not forgiven, not forgotten, just finished. And that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't require your permission to end. It just requires you to stop pretending it didn't happen, to document it, to report it, to let the system do what systems do when you feed them proof. They don't always work. But when they do, they work because someone was willing to tell the truth, even when the truth cost them everything they thought family meant. I sleep through the night now. I don't check my credit report every week. I don't wait for the other shoe to drop. Because I know now that the worst thing that could happen already did, and I survived it, not by forgiving, not by forgetting, but by refusing to let someone else's choices become my burden. That's not revenge. That's just justice. And sometimes, justice is the only closure you get.